Good day and welcome back to another DBZ Dokkan Battle video. In this video we are going to be taking a look at team building. So we're going to be taking a look at team building. Personally speaking, I used to do some weekly team build guides, the weekly build, and I plan to bring it back. I think it's fun content, at least for me, and it's exciting to always take a look at teams. Maybe they're more relevant because of an SBR stage. Maybe I used a free-to-play version of the team. I don't know, but each week I'll be doing a video with some follow-up videos, you know, just a look at how they do in your SBR or ESBR, a look at how they do in Red Zone, or a Fighting Legend Goku if they're not that great in SBR, ESBR, just whichever one. But we're taking a look at Giant Form. So the leads for Giant Form, Giant Ape Power. The leads for Giant Ape Power are the Tech LR Vegeta, the Int Super Saiyan 4 Gogeta, and currently the physical Super Saiyan 4 Limit Breaker Vegeta. So pretty straightforward, I want to say. A decent variety of leads. I think obviously most people would like to always have a lot of leads, and you can use Int Gohan as a sub lead, I guess, although I wouldn't suggest. But yeah, a lot of people like a lot of leads. I think all three leads are decent. I think possibly the Super Saiyan 4 Gogeta has slightly aged. The LR Vegeta is a little bit difficult to use, and there are question marks around the Giant Ape Power Full Power Limit Breaker Vegeta, but I think all of them are still fairly decent. I mean, I've used all of them in relatively high content, so yeah, I can't really complain too much about them. So the team can kind of build a couple of ways. You have the Dragon Ball Heroes team, which if you've summoned on Dragon Ball Hero banners is pretty decent, but it's very restrictive. And then we have the GT kind of side of things. There is another team, a Giant Ape Form team, but generally the two most powerful teams and the most synergistic teams are ones that lead to either side of this. And we'll talk about hybrid teams in that, but yeah, basically you have either your Heroes team, or like your hybrid-ish team, which you can see there, or you have your GT more centric team. Generally sticking to one of each is better. Obviously in terms of like importance, the reason being is, so most SS4 units, or Giant Ape Power units as they're called, have what's called Saiyan Raw. And Saiyan Raw is a very, very crucial link that assists you with a lot. It gives you 25% attack and 10% defense. It's one of the stronger defensive links for this team. And almost all of the Giant Ape Power units have Saiyan Raw, almost all of them. But there is some lacking there. Prepared for Battles also fairly common, and Super Saiyan's also fairly common, as a lot of them are Super Saiyan 4 units, but there are some exceptions. So if we look at the Super Saiyan 4 units and we look at their link sets, there are a couple notable exceptions, and you'll see them pretty easily. I think obviously the one that first springs to mind is going to be the Int SS4 Gogeta and the Tech SS4 Gogeta. Both of these units do not have Saiyan Raw. For some reason they didn't give it to them. They did give it to the physical LR, which I don't have, but that's very good for the physical LR. Now in terms of team building, as I mentioned before, you've got your Dragon Ball Heroes team, where a lot of them will have Saiyan Raw, but on the GT side things can get a little bit wonky. Not every unit on the GT side has Saiyan Raw, and so when you're building the GT team, you do need to be aware of the fact that you're not going to be able to consistently get Saiyan Raw, especially if you're incorporating SS4 Gogeta, or you're incorporating, you know, some of the Super Saiyan Vegeta and Super Saiyan Gokus. So you can see there, if we just rely on Saiyan Raw, the SS4 team feels like it's lacking a little bit. You know, it's decent from a GT side, but it is maybe lacking a little bit of congruency, of power, of speed. So when you look at running a GT version of Giant Ape Power, you need to understand that you may not be able to proc Saiyan Raw consistently. However, in lieu of this, all these units do have GT, which in its own right is an exceptionally powerful link. So yes, they will lose a bit of attack, but they'll gain ki and they'll have the same amount of defense. So it's not a huge loss, but it is something that I want to point out. You do need to consider these things. You know, for example, SS4 Gogeta is great, but he's not going to give physical LR Gogeta, say, in Raw. So just bear that in mind when you are building your team. Yeah, that's probably the most I would say. But in terms of the GT side, I think there's a lot of fluidity there. There are some options. Obviously, both LR SS4s I think are still pretty good. Then you've got obviously the in Super Saiyan 4 Gogeta, who's also, I think, still fairly solid. SS4 Tech Gogeta, I think, is still also relatively good. I just think the problem with them is they rely a lot on their counters for evading supers. That's just SS4 units in general. So when they get caught out by a super attack, they can tend to have some problems. As I mentioned, there is also a third team that you can kind of build around this. That is the Giant Form team. And this Giant Form team is pretty decent. It'll clear Giant Form based content. But obviously there are some caveats. So main thing, their linking is actually pretty good. But it's a very limited roster of units. The Giant Ape transformation is actually pretty good, or fairly common in Dragon Ball, but the amount of units that have the Giant Ape transformation that are usable are very limited. You've got the Strength Raditz, you've got that Physical Goku, AGL Vegeta, the Tech Vegeta, who's also a lead, and then you've got Kumba. The rest, kind of weak. The free-to-play options are also not great from a Giant Ape Power perspective. You've basically got AGL Bardock, and you've got Int GT Vegeta. One day they'll give easy A's to Baby, they'll give easy A's to the Bardock team. This will improve your Giant Form, Giant Ape Power options. Right now it's a team that I would say is good, but I think you need these specific pieces. You basically need these specific 6 units, including Baby maybe, to make it work. If you don't have those, it gets a little bit difficult to actually run the team. You know, the side options are not particularly impressive. So yeah, in terms of me, in terms of what I like to run for GT, I would probably say that this is my optimal GT team. I think this is where I'm happiest. I do use Tech Full Power Goku, but just full disclaimer, obviously it's a little bit difficult with this team build to trigger the full power foresight ability. Luckily it's not too restrictive, so I still feel like using him is still pretty good. And in general, I think the rest of the team is incredibly rock solid. I think they're very great defensively. We do lack kind of a first turn tank without my own Super Saiyan 4 Gogeta. I think, you know, there is a little bit of a lack of units with start of turn defense that's very high. A lot of them gain a large amount of defense after super. But, you know, that is the price you pay. On the hero side, a very similar story. We have Int SS4 Gohan, who's a great first slot unit, but the rest are not terrible defensively. They're all very exceptional defensively after super, for the most part. Kumba is decent, but he needs a dupe or two. His start of turn defense without dupes is a little bit low. It's in like the 150s. And it's the same with like Tech Broly as well. Tech SS4 Broly, also just, you know, great damage dealer, but kind of lacks anything else. And if we're looking at hybrid teams, I think this is kind of what I'd like to run. I think I ran this for my SPR or something pretty close to it. And this is a pretty solid team. I wouldn't say it's an all-conquering team, but it's a pretty fun team that lets you incorporate a lot of different units and active skills and just kind of mesh a little bit of the two categories together. You can float SS4 Gogeta, you can have an SS4's rotation, you can have an SS4 Limit Breaker rotation, and you can have Int Gohan as a solid tank. In terms of the heroes team, I think my optimal pick is pretty obvious. I think there's no real discrediting this team build. I think this is the strongest Giant Ape Power team, at least incorporating heroes units. One thing I will say is if you want to mesh it up a little bit, maybe replace Kumba with SS4 Gogeta. Could definitely be a little bit better. I think SS4 Gogeta will do a lot more in the long run. And with using double physical SS4 Vegeta leads, you can get away with it. If not, you probably want to substitute in the SS4 full power Goku. And then finally, this is my GT team, which I think personally is, again, very, very solid. Very good team, super reliable. Honorable mention to the Kid Gohan. If you can get a Goku on the rotation, Kid Gohan actually tanks incredibly well. His big issue though is his link set. That free-to-play Kid Gohan lacks a lot of link set capabilities. And yeah, obviously final mention to the LRSS4 Goku and Vegeta, who obviously are a fantastic unit. I don't have them. They would basically slot in as a lead for your GT team, or just basically anywhere for any of the SS4 teams. They're definitely by far the most powerful Giant Ape Power unit. And yeah, that's gonna be it from me. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys next time. Till then, bye.